This is an Eye on Annapolis bonus podcast.
I've never been up here in the Severna Park Library before, but we are here in the meeting room. We're with Danielle and Sean Moore, who are local residents. Sean works with the Anne Arundel County Fire Department, and his wife Danielle. But we are here to talk about a journey that they are undertaking along with their family, and notably their son, Jonah. Thank you guys, for, agreeing to talk to us. And I think what you're going through is incredible, and I hope that we're able to help in some way. But I think a lot of people need to, learn about what's going on. Jonah was diagnosed, if that's the correct word, with, is it biliary
Atresia.
Okay. And you've had some practice to pronounce that. So.
I have, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
How old is he now?
He just hit 10 months. Today. Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Okay, so he's just a little guy.
Yeah.
It's his birthday.
Yeah, it
sort
is.
Of. Oh, awesome.
We got to take his picture.
Awesome. Well, what is biliary atresia?
This whole journey has been the most educational for me because I went to school and have a degree in marketing and communications, and Sean has more experience with, anatomy, physiology. So he understands the doctor speak and translates to me, so I can then give the watered-down version.
Okay, awesome.
But essentially, biliary atresia is where the ducts or tubes in your biliary region are blocked, so your body doesn't filter bile from the liver to your gallbladder properly, and so then it ends up in your system. And when you think bile, and babies, you think of bilirubin, like a jaundiced, yellowed baby, which is super common in infants. And Jonah had it for his first few days of life, and then tested out fine. So we didn't think anything of it. And then, as you were saying, diagnosed at 2 months, he had a bunch of symptoms, and then that's when we realized, there's this thing, biliary atresia, that you can have that's wrong. And it turned out Jonah didn't have a gallbladder. So even if his ducts weren't working, he didn't have a gallbladder to help filter out the bile in his system.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, what is the, I guess, the prognosis of this? I mean, is if untreated?
It's definitely, if untreated completely, it's definitely a terminal illness. I think back before that they started doing the procedure where they initially rerouted his ducts to create bile flow out of his liver. It's only been going on for 50 years, and before that it was a terminal illness. I think kids would pass within 2 years of life.
How rare is this?
It's about 1 in 12 to 20,000 babies.
Oh my word! Okay, so it's fairly rare. I mean, it's
for sure, and it just kind of depends on the region. Places in Asia, for example, have a little bit of a higher rate compared to the U.S. or Europe.
But to that point, it is classified as a rare disease or disorder. I think February is rare. Again, things you learn through this journey is rare disease month or something like that. And so the statistics show that it's rare, but there is also no known cause or cure for it. While there are procedures and treatments, they aren't cures. And so that's why it's different regions seem to have more cases, but they can't pinpoint why.
Okay.
So there's still a lot of research and studies going on. I mean, Jonah is not in any of those, but we, through social media, have joined groups and see and hear stories about it.
One of the good sides of social media is that people can come together for common causes and everything else. Now, at 10 months, I mean, what do you do? What have we done to treat Jonah?
Sure. So he was diagnosed at 2 months old, and to diagnose him, he had to go through a surgical procedure. It's called a cholangiogram. Essentially, they're testing to see if your body is, the bile is flowing properly, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
And then within that procedure, they can immediately diagnose biliary atresia, which they had already, that was their hypothesis based on all his symptoms of jaundice, no weight gain in a month.
The ultrasound showing no gallbladder.
Yeah. He was
pretty typical.
Checking all the boxes of
Right, but there was just not a firm...
Right. So then they did the what's called the Kasai procedure, which Sean was kind of explaining. They take his small intestine and kind of make that become an unblocked bile duct so that the liver drains properly.
Okay.
Yeah, they essentially just
So it's a detour.
Yeah, they create a duct using a section
Okay.
of bowel to try to make it drain properly.
And that's where the treatment is at this point, or?
So that was treatment 1. There's kind of like 3 buckets, as everyone dumbed down for me.
Yeah.
It's either the Kasai procedure works, and you are in this very small percentile of people who that works, and you're kind of living a relatively normal life into adulthood. Again, it's hard to say, as Sean said, like the oldest living BA babies are in their 50s and 60s now. So there's a lot of unknowns. Then there's like the second bucket, which is the most common, and where, the most common is you have a Kasai procedure, it works, but you eventually need a liver transplant within like 1 or 2 years of life, and that's where Jonah falls. And then the third is it fails right away and you need a liver transplant like shortly after.
Okay.
So Jonah didn't make it quite to 1-2 years before a transplant. His Kasai worked for about 2 months before we started seeing issues and hospitalizations for just infections within his system. So all summer, I think, we were in and out of the hospital.
Mm-hmm. It was pretty much 2 weeks on, 2 weeks in, all summer long, from Memorial Day all the way until he had his transplant in August.
Yeah, and then he had transplant, and during that recovery in the hospital, inpatient, he ended up having another issue because of surgery. It's common. It's just there was a small perforation in his intestine while they were doing the transplant procedure. So then he had to have another surgery to correct that.
Oh, my poor little guy.
Before coming in. So he's had...
okay, so we're talking about a transplant, though.
Yeah.
So he's now had, at 10 months of age, has had a liver transplant?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you hear about these transplants and people are on lists forever. It seems. How did he get so fortunate to be able to get a transplant so quickly?
Yeah. So there's 2 options, and I honestly had never heard of living organ donation. Obviously, not every organ can be donated from someone living, but a liver is one of those, and Georgetown Transplant Institute was recommended through our Jonah's GI doctors, who are out of the University of Maryland Children's Hospital, and they are one of like the top 6 pediatric transplant organizations, but they also do living donor transplants. So they have an amazing team there who educated us on like the options. Sometimes you don't have people who are willing to do that because you're essentially taking a healthy person and saying, we're going to do this procedure on you. There's no benefit, medical benefit to you. Obviously, you're helping someone else. And it's a really big screening process because they need to make sure that you are not only medically the right fit, so from like blood type, I don't know what else.
Well, I know it's a very, very difficult puzzle, I guess, to put together to get a proper recipient with a donor.
Yeah.
And with a liver, because everybody sort of needs a liver.
Yes.
So they're not. It's not what did they take? A piece of a liver to?
So the liver is the only
organ that regenerates.
regrows.
Yeah, so
Really?
it'll like her liver will grow back to full size. They only took 14% of her liver.
So hers
hers will
the
grow
donor?
back.
Yep.
Hers will grow back to full size, and his, in theory, is supposed to grow with him.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons, too, that she was a really good match was that all the ducts and arteries and veins, everything lined up really well for the 2 of them, and that was and that was one of the big reasons that she was a better match than myself.
Yeah, and we actually, this is, I don't want to say rare when we're talking about a rare disease because I don't have statistics, but it's uncommon for both parents to be a match. It's hard for even a parent to be a match, which is confusing because you think, I just gave birth to this kid. Like,
right,
he's me.
carried him and nurtured him for 9 months. And
Yeah. So we're both matches. And we had kind of our thought of, okay, if we have to pick which one of us will do it, we were like, Sean will be the donor. That was our choice.
Yeah.
But we were like, we will do whatever is best for Jonah. And then they were like Sean said, because of how everything lined up, they would have to do like less maneuvering to connect my portion of my liver to Jonah than Sean's, that it was like medically made more sense for me. And so I did that. In hindsight, it was the better decision. Like, I'm glad we didn't listen to ourselves.
Well, I mean, how long did this procedure take? And I mean, where it was done in Georgetown, you said?
Yeah, it was Georgetown. Sean
So her surgery was like around 4 or 5 hours, and his was like closer to 7, 8 hours.
Okay, and this is, I mean, I'm presuming that you go in one day and they carve out a piece of your liver, put it on ice, or
yeah, I mean, pretty much they have to, with living donors, they have to do the surgeries at the exact same time.
Oh my word! Okay.
So there's a team that's taking her liver out at the same time they're removing Jonah's old liver and prepping everything
next door
for him
to each other.
next door, and they're talking to each other the whole time.
Yeah, like, slow down. We're ready here. Like, it's a super coordinated effort. So everything from like booking the surgery rooms, like that, it has to be next to each other on the same day. So I went in. It was a unique experience because in the pre-op, like when they're like getting ready to wheel you back to the operating room, it's me, and then across from me is Jonah with Sean. And then, I go into operating, and then maybe like 30 minutes later, Jonah goes back. So it's like it's a well-oiled machine, but
it's like this very precise, almost dance to get it done there. And so I'm presuming with the 4 hours that you had, I mean, then you're in recovery, not really knowing what's happening with your son.
No,
that has to be horrible.
It's weird because you're like coming out of anesthesia. And you're kind of all, on all these painkiller medications, and you have people tending to you. But yeah, you're right. I'm thinking about like, where's my phone? Somebody asked Sean. My sister was my kind of care person because with COVID, you can only have, limited folks and in the hospital with you and all of that. And so she was keeping me up to date, thankfully. And then the surgeons, like they were just all so great, like minute by minute. It went great, like he's fine, he's recovering.
Right.
But yeah, it's kind of, I remember waking up and being like, did it work? Did it work?
And how long ago was this again?
It'll be 3 months this week.
How's Jonah doing? I mean, you appear to have recovered very nicely, and your liver is in the process of growing back.
Yeah, so for me, like, my recovery is, I guess some people say, like, abnormally miraculous. I was out of the hospital within like 4 days, and I really felt fine. The hardest part was like not all the restrictions, don't lift your kids. Well, okay, I'm a mom of a toddler and a baby. Like,
that's easy for you to say.
Exactly. So that part was hard, and then there were some peaks of like post-op just pains because I pushed it to, I didn't follow the restrictions to a T. But like 2 months out, I'm feeling pretty normal. Jonah, for the most part, has been, really good. He has some weeks where better than others, but anything with him could send him back to the hospital. So, like, he's already had he's been back once.
Yeah. So our toddler got sick from just going to preschool, which is totally normal. He just got a cold.
Sure.
So, but then obviously he brought that home, and then Jonah got sick. We didn't know. At first we were like, well, we don't know what to do if, depending on how bad it is. And he had just gotten a antibody infusion a couple days prior to him getting any kind of symptoms. So we weren't sure if it was related to that. And then he spiked a fever. He was being really lethargic. And then they wanted us to go into the emergency room to make sure that he didn't have an infection, because especially he had a PICC line still in, which automatically means that they need to do blood cultures and make sure that there's not a blood infection. So it was kind of an automatic, he's got to go in and get checked and get his liver numbers checked out and make sure it wasn't anything more than the cold, which that's when we realized, too, that just a cold would make, his numbers essentially go kind of crazy, and he'd have these a little bit more harsher symptoms than a typical kid would. So it was kind of a learning experience. But since then, it's definitely, he's gotten a lot better. It just... we didn't know what to expect from a cold.
Yeah. Now, I mean, do the procedures that he's had? I mean, you said the perforated intestine and the liver transplant as well. I mean, has that affected his, let's say, physical development to a degree?
I would say a little bit, but not to the point where it's abnormal. Like, obviously you had major abdominal surgery.
Sure.
And then prior to the surgery, you had major abdominal symptoms, like his belly was inflated, like so moving around has been a little bit different. And he also, like, just because he's had certain, like, lines, he has a feeding tube that he has in his nose now, for just, not even for feeding, just all of his medications. So he's adapted differently, but he's super strong and he's super headstrong. I guess you could say.
I'm going to guess he gets that from his parents.
He's got a little bit.
I don't know. He's. I don't know. We're not sure where. I think through the social media, like all of these other BA babies that we've come to know, I'm using air quotes. They all have some of these same qualities of just being very strong and, like, just really unbelievable, because if any of us went through all of these things in such a short period of time, we would be like, I don't know, just not.
I'm out. Yeah.
But he is the happiest, most smiley baby, and I mean, he's army crawling around. He doesn't really have an interest in crawling because he can get there, so he'll figure it out, and he does figure it out. So it's great. It's incredible.
There's going to be a kid in, 10, 15, 20, 25 years from now is just going to be just so thankful for what he has. I think. I mean, how have you guys been doing? This has got to be tough for you. I mean, you're a firefighter here at Anne Arundel County, Sean, and Danielle, were you working before this? I mean, I know 2 kids.
No, I was working up until I was working for Crosby Marketing in West Annapolis, and so I'd been there for almost 3 years, and then when the Kasai started to fail and we were in and out of the hospital all summer long. I mean, the Crosby family, and I mean that by Raymond, Ralph, and the rest of the employees who are like family. They were super supportive, gave me all the leave, space, time to do whatever was right. But for me, I couldn't mentally be present at either, like the Jonah world, Caleb, our toddler, just managing our home and then working. Because it's marketing. Like, everything's fast paced, and I already had a hard time shutting work off at night. So I walked away from working to just be 100% able to jump and go stay at the hospital while Sean still was working shifts with the fire department.
Shifts are. I mean, you guys are a different breed that are able to do that. I don't understand how some people do it, but they do work. Are you still working? I mean, because it looks like the care has to fall on you at some point. And all of a sudden you're Mr. Mom and a little bit of everything else.
Yeah, it was definitely a challenge. The hospital stay with Jonah after transplant even ended up being longer than we expected. So I had to be the one that was there the whole time with COVID restrictions and everything. We were really only allowed
didn't even think
one
about
parent.
this.
So, like, I really just had to kind of be there the whole time while everything. Yeah. So that was a challenge, and not working, and then coming back and being at home for another month while she was still recovering. She couldn't physically lift the kids, so I kind of needed to be that person to be able to physically handle both the boys, whether it was Jonah feeding at night or putting our toddler down to bed. I kind of had to do a lot of that stuff, and that was obviously pretty hard. And we were super fortunate for me working for the fire department, just for the fact that I had a lot of leave. The county is pretty generous in helping us out in that way, and having sick leave and vacation leave, and being flexible in how I was able to kind of use that, as far as even when I started to run out of leave. The fire department's really a big family. I had a lot of support from a lot of my coworkers and friends that were able to donate their time to me, so that I would be able to stay home more and help take care of my family a little bit more than I was even expecting. So it was really
awesome.
Really
they're
cool.
donating their own accumulated leave to.
Yeah. So they were able to do that, and even just the people that work for the personnel department were able to kind of.
They were creative in ways to, like,
to get me to
that.
stretch it a little bit more and switching me to different, a different kind of schedule or whatnot to help me get to the point where I felt comfortable going back to work and leaving Danielle and my mother-in-law and whoever else was helping with the kids and be able to maintain the home for 24 hours while I was gone,
Right.
which doesn't seem like a lot in the grand scheme of things, but it really is.
Yeah, it's hard. And we do have. My sister lives a mile down the road from us. My parents are.
Sounds like a godsend.
Yes, and so because we ended up here, just through all these circumstances that led us here, it's no coincidence to me at all, and it's worked out really well. But I think the hardest thing to understand too is it's Jonah is still on so many medications, and one of them is giving him a shot twice a day. So that's hard to ask someone who it's not just can you watch the
That's
kids.
not a parent to do that kind of stuff.
Exactly. That's a really big ask for someone. Or can you push these 6 things through his feeding tube medication to make sure he gets them? And it all has to be clockwork. And again, from my marketing and career side, I'm type A plus. Spreadsheets I love, checklists, that's all me. So for me, and for us, it is pretty organized at home with the medications, but we say this all the time. I can't imagine being a family going through this without a community, whether that's family, friends, neighbors, supporting you, but also if I had to do this and work, it's another full-time job. I've spent days where it's 6 hours and I'm literally calling insurance, the pharmacy, the doctors, just trying to get his one most important medication sorted out.
I would say that momming or dadding is a full-time job,
yes.
regardless, but much less when you've got a child that is recovering from a serious medical condition. You guys are fortunate that the Anne Arundel County has a good insurance plan, but I'm sure as with everything, I'm convinced insurance companies are in the business of trying to just decline paying whatever. The expenses. You look at. I'm sure there's medical expenses that aren't covered. Some comfort things, I think, and certainly there's a loss of income for the time that you've been out, and everything else. This is a. Obviously it's a mental burden and it's an emotional burden. But it's also got to be a financial burden that neither of you signed up for when you got married.
Yeah.
How are you dealing with that? Is there a way that we can help on making sure that Jonah is that 25-year-old that's really thankful for what he is, and to make sure that you guys aren't absolutely struggling and falling under this. We all push rocks up the hill, but yours is a pretty big rock that you're pushing right now.
Yeah, well, as you said, financially, we have had really great coverage, but with anything related or that ties back up to politics or employment and the unknowns, we don't know what healthcare and coverage will look like in the future. So kind of up until this point, we have been grateful to have received, meal kits, donations, events that have given us just funds to help kind of supplement what we've lost, which has been great. And then some of that was through fundraising, events, and then kind of looking forward, what we're most focused on, obviously, our day-to-day, making sure that is still kind of secure, which we're feeling good about, but is, to your point, to get Jonah to be to that 25-year-old, there might come a point where we aren't financially supporting him, or there are unknowns or coverage changes.
There's a lot of unknown down the future. And, just throughout this process, as I'm going through my mind, I'm thinking, you've got a child in Georgetown in a hospital. Okay, so we've got presumably, maybe some hotel nights over there. We've got, commuting back and forth there.
Yeah.
The fire department and the police department are notorious for their overtime, and it contributes an awful lot to your income. On the base salary is not there, but the overtime really does make up for that. And I'm going to guess that when they're doing paid leave, they're not kicking up the overtime era as well. So, you probably slide back down into a base rate of pay. So there's a lot of unknown not unknown, but unexpected.
And things add up too, right? All of those medications, thankfully for Jonah, so far, have been covered, minus copays. But when you're filling a different prescription, we're at the pharmacist, I don't know, once or twice a week feeling something, well, all those co-pays do start to add up that, again, could have never imagined anything like this. The commutes, we had like traded in a car before Jonah came thinking we're going to fit our family, and now it's like we never thought we would even have this many miles on this car, and so it's those kind of things now, but then it's a lot of the unknowns. We partnered with the Children's Organ Transplant Association, CODA, and they are a nonprofit who focuses on children and young adults who require or have received a transplant. And so through our BA network, we know some families that partnered with them. So any money that goes to CODA in honor of Jonah goes in a special fund just for him, and he has access to that for his whole life. So it's tax deductible and not taxed towards him for any transplant-related expenses. So his healthcare premiums when he's older, his prescriptions if they're not covered, co-pays, miles or hotel stays, because he will have to go to Georgetown once a year for his life.
To be checked out and make sure that we're all
at the very least.
It's really a lifelong
no,
commitment.
There's lifelong struggles
be,
and challenges that he's gonna face for
right.
sure. I would imagine. Well, what I'll do, I'll make sure I get a link in that, and we'll make sure that people know how they can support that. I mean, future looks pretty good.
Yeah.
It's a successful transplant thanks to Mom. Moms always hold the family together. Just remember that.
Yes,
Sean.
It's true. I don't doubt it.
How is is it a brother or a sister that he's got at home?
It's a brother.
Brother, how is he dealing? Okay, you guys are young, and how old's the sibling?
He'll be 3 in December.
Okay, so there's not a whole lot of understanding there, I guess.
No.
How is that?
He went from only child to big brother to brother of a sick child, and I still classify him, Caleb, the almost 3-year-old, as not a COVID baby, but he's not really left the home while the pandemic was here. So he went from not leaving home and always having us. I was working from home. Obviously, Sean was working with the fire department through COVID, but still home on non-shift days. And to us rotating shifts between the hospital and Jonah and him. So he's definitely had his sacrifices. I think he's had his, some temperamental, behavioral kind of outbursts. But overall, he's a super sweet kid. He will explain really what his brother has to the best a 3-year-old can. He's a super verbal 3-year-old.
So he does know that Jonah's, had some surgery and he's getting better, and we knows. Well, that's good. Are they buddies?
Jonah is obsessed with Caleb.
Yeah, he loves him. He
Caleb
chases
is
him all
starting
over.
to appreciate having a brother. I think he just wants Jonah to be able to walk and be more playful with him. But we think the way Jonah's temperament is, he's going to wish he never walks by the time he does, because he's too particular, and Jonah is just a crazy little guy.
Yeah. He tries to climb all over him, play with all his toys.
Yeah.
And Caleb will try to, he'll take some of the toys, like his trucks away and put them up where he knows he can't get them.
It's so funny. As you go through life, you'll see that whole sibling rivalry thing. Just, I don't know whether you guys, you have a sister, Danielle.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you've got,
I have an older brother.
I know my kids was, my son and my son's the oldest, and my middle daughter was. They were at it just all the time, and it was just picking on each other and the whole 9 yards. And then at one point, my son, late in high school, realized, oh, wait a minute, she has some cute friends. The whole dynamic changed. It was like, okay, so now I've got use for you.
Yeah.
It was kind of fun. But this is an amazing story. I mean, I think you're an amazing parent. Certainly, no offense, Sean, but Danielle a little bit more. Just that she gave up 14% of her liver to save her son's life. And I mean, I don't think that's anything that any mother would not do.
Yeah.
But it's still pretty heroic to be able to do something like that. And I'm, thrilled that it's, to be a success, and, he's going to be able to live as strong and as long of a life, with future challenges.
Yeah.
I think, if we can support him in any way, we'll make sure that the link gets in here. Please do that. Look for the Facebook page.
Jonah's BA Journey. Mm-hmm.
Jonah's BA Journey, and follow along with it. It's quite a story. It's, you can see the support that you have from strangers and family and friends alike. And we've got to remember, as people, as humans, we're kind of all in this together. And we've got to, when we can help somebody out, we should do it. And it doesn't take that much to do it. It could be financially, or it could be, okay, hey, I am a retired nurse. Can I come up and maybe help, do, an injection or something like that, and to give you two a night out. Different things like that would be a good thing to do. But take a look with Jonah's BA Journey on Facebook is probably the best place to start with there. I know that you and your sister are updating that quite a bit. And I really thank you guys for telling your story. I am so thankful that it's turning out to be a great story, because I know 8 months ago you were probably just, had no idea where this was going. Thank you for stepping up to be a firefighter in Anne Arundel County, Sean.
Yeah, of course.
We do need you guys to peel us out of cars when we screw up, and put the wet stuff on the red stuff, and
exactly,
and go from there. And Danielle, thank you for being such a great mom. Don't ever let him forget that.
No.
I don't think she will.
And I think it actually builds a much stronger bond between the two of you for lifelong. But I wish you guys and Jonah the best. I wish I could meet him, but obviously for reasons that is not in the cards today. But I do hope to do it probably maybe in a year or so when everything is all set. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been a bonus podcast from Eye on Annapolis. Please visit us at eyeonannapolis.net. Follow us on Facebook at All Annapolis and on Twitter at Eye on Annapolis. And if you haven't subscribed to the Daily News Brief podcast, go for it. And all of your local news will be delivered to your phone, tablet, or smart device by 6 a.m. every Monday through Friday.